Welcome to Spirit Grooves. My name is Michael Erlewine. In this session, we're going to be going into various ways that we can enhance awareness and support its development. What about all this religious stuff? I have tried to explain something about what shamatha meditation is not. I have mentioned that, at least for beginners, it's not relaxing, usually not easy, can be boring, and above all, it's only a practice, and this practice should not be confused with the results of the practice. Now, I don't intend to be negative. Much of this is to point out that here in the United States, where there are so many different ideas as to what meditation is, let's not mistake the authentic meditation technique as taught by Zen and Tibetan Buddhists for the many quite valid in their own right relaxation techniques that masquerade under the same name, meditation. There's nothing wrong with lighting some incense, burning a candle, finding a quiet place, taking a break, and trying to kick back for a few minutes. I do it myself. Well, not usually the incense and the candle part, but I do like to relax like all of us. But these kind of relaxation therapies are not likely to result in the habit of meditation that I'm presenting here. Authentic shamatha meditation is a discipline that first has to be learned and then practiced like any other formal technique, whether it's playing a musical instrument or learning a computer program like Photoshop and so on. These techniques don't just learn themselves. I wish they did. And I've purposely avoided dragging the whole element of religion into this discussion, but let's look at it for a moment. Although Buddhism is usually classified technically as a religion, I've never considered it so. And I'm not a very religious person of the go to church on Sunday variety. Early on, I knew that sitting in church for 1 hour or so a week would never get me to any kind of heaven. I would need a lot more than that, my friends. Buddhism and these mind training techniques is just a very practical method to work with the mind. It's not something that I even believe in, but rather something that I find useful, that works, something essential for my mental clarity. What, you may ask, what are all the devotion, the prayers, the aspirations, and all of that other, quote, religious stuff? What are they all about that are usually connected to Buddhism? And the answer to this question is a little more difficult, but here goes. The shamatha meditation technique that I've been discussing here has itself been around for thousands of years, and it works fine with or without any feelings of devotion that we might once in a while have. Meditating in this way is also perfect for our deepest and most sincere moments of knowing ourselves, just as it is perfect for keeping focused on a project or on our daily tasks. Now, the question is, where do these two streams cross? And I can only give you my experience. I'm a bit of a hard case when it comes to education. I don't take to teachers easily, and I have trouble from learning from those that I don't respect. Keep in mind that I never finished high school because I was too anxious to get out there in the, quote, real world and have at it. And at that time, I could find no teachers that I wanted to follow. My instructors have always been life teachers, not professors of this or that subject. And I know that this is not always a reasonable attitude on my part, and I'm working on it. But nevertheless, this is my personal situation. Perhaps it's because from the age of 6 until 16 or 17, I intensely studied nature and the outdoors, and I mean intensely. Nature was my school book, and the lessons that I learned there did not always jibe with what society wanted to teach me. In fact, that's an understatement. Furthermore, my idea of fun has always been to find someone more experienced in life than myself, someone who compels my respect, and to learn from them. From this kind of person, I'm willing and eager to learn. In fact, I live for this. And while I'm not one of those who wins the lottery, in finding authentic teachers, I have been very, very lucky. In these kind of situations, I'm always willing to assume the role of student. I even keep my mouth shut. It's not my intention here to tell you the stories of my life teachers, but rather to explain how the more spiritual aspects of Buddhism came into my life. In a word, these aspects, like prayer, like making aspirations, were pointed out to me by my life teachers, and they're not something that I came up with independently. I find most religious sentiment useless. In these videos, I've been trying to point out the practical value of learning meditation, and I've kind of skirted around the deeper and more personal side of it all. Yet that side exists for each of us somewhere inside. There are moments of knowing or realization that go beyond our day-to-day practical considerations. Life is not all just about somehow getting ahead, paying the bills. My life teachers have been deep and not shallow. They do not just surf the surface of it all, but they also go to the root level, at the heart, the center of things. And in my experience, the particular Tibetan Rinpoches and other teachers that I have been so fortunate to work with are deeply spiritual beings. And weigh my words here, they command my respect. They tame me, and I'm not all that easy to tame. My point is that when I was first taught basic meditation, as we've been discussing here, of course it eventually had an outer practical use in my day-to-day life. But there was something more they passed on than just my advantage. My Dharma teachers showed me that if I'm going to perform an action, to take action, and if that action is going to be done, that I might as well do it with heart, as in with all my heart. That's the spiritual component I'm trying to share with you here. The Tibetans teach, as do many Native American traditions, to make aspirations before entering on any task, and in addition, at the end of that task or piece of work, to offer and dedicate the results not just for your own personal good, but also for the benefit of all sentient beings. They term this action the dedication of the merit. Furthermore, these aspirations and dedications are, at least for the Tibetans, not merely something added on to our actions, but are considered even more important than the actions themselves. And this is a key thought, so please take note. Aspiring to benefit all beings at the beginning of a task or an action or our workday, and offering whatever merit or good we did manage, however small, to accumulate from our finished work to the benefit of all beings. Like at the end of the action, when the workday is done. That's how the work or the action we do becomes auspicious and ultimately of value. As I've mentioned before, the skillfulness of our actions is what generates merit and brings greater wisdom or awareness. But without encapsulating that skillfulness with the bookends of proper aspiration before we do something and proper dedication after we're done, that merit can be lost. The Tibetans teach that we must dedicate the merit, and this is key to their teachings. So if this kind of aspiration and dedication makes me, quote, religious, then color me religious. And if being respectful and devoted to the teachers in my life, who were kind enough to point all of this out to me, makes me a religious groupie with a guru, then so be it. But that would be the extent of my religiosity. I deeply respect those men and women whose kindness makes it possible for me to share any of these thoughts with you here, and I wish nothing more than to follow in that line, in that lineage of such teachers, and help to pass all of this on and keep it alive in the world. Because learning about the true nature of my mind has been the key to life as I know it. Let's talk a little bit about the concept of the self. And I love the old poem, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. I sometimes like to think of myself, or my ego, as Mr. Humpty Dumpty, sitting up there high on a wall. And every once in a great while, that self of mine has a great fall and is shattered into a million pieces. Only here's where the poem ends for me. Every time my sense of self is shattered, I move heaven and earth to put those pieces back together into a coherent self-image again. I don't like it when the image of myself is shattered, and whatever is beneath it, and it might be nothing at all, is exposed. I don't like it. Now, the Buddhists have an interesting view of the self, that it has no true existence, but it's just something that we've managed to pull or gather around us to hide our inherent emptiness or nakedness. One common misunderstanding would have it that the Buddhists claim that there is no self, that the self has no existence and does not exist at all. But it's not. That's not it. It's a little bit subtle. Buddhist teachings point out that not only does a self exist for each of us, but that there will never be a time when we will be without a self. The self not only exists, but it is a permanent, in terms of time, a permanent part of each of us. The self is kind of our executive secretary, reminding me when I've got a dental appointment, looking out for this and looking out for that, and so on. What the Buddhists do state is that the self, our self, has no true or absolute existence in itself. This may at first seem like a play on words, but it's not. While the self is here with us permanently, what it is composed of has no permanent or true reality, in the sense that it's only a collection of attachments that we have drawn around us. In other words, our concept of a self changes as we change. For example, as a child, our self-image may have centered around a new bike, or wanting a new bike, or perhaps our favorite video game. In our teens, perhaps it was our girlfriend or boyfriend that was central to us. And when we got older yet, it could be anything, a new car, house, or a child that is at the very center of what we consider important, what we consider ourselves. So in other words, while the presence of a self remains the same, is always with us, what constitutes or what makes up that sense of self, it actually changes over time. Thus the statement that what makes up that self-image has no true or permanent existence. So things change. So just to repeat, the fact that we have a self is permanent. But what makes up that image of ourself has no true or lasting existence. It's not permanent, but is always changing as we do. And here's the interesting part. Every once in a while, some event, a challenge or a tragedy or whatever happens to us, and the sense of ourself gets shattered. It could be as simple as an unflattering remark from someone we love or respect. It could be that we zigged when we should have zagged and managed to catch a glimpse of our own hypocrisy in the mirror of our mind. Or it could be something life-threatening, a life-changing event like someone we love dies, and we suddenly are shattered. There are many ways to drop the self or see through it, at least temporarily. To put this differently, our self-image can also go void or become transparent at times. When this happens, the total self-image that we've drawn around us just falls away, and we are left with what? And that's my point. What is beneath all that veneer? Beneath all those attachments or identifiers that we've endlessly collected around us? When our sense of self is momentarily shattered, and we are reduced to a quivering mass of vulnerability, we quickly struggle to put that Humpty Dumpty self back together again, just as fast as we can, pronto. That sense of vulnerability, of uncomfortableness, is the last thing in the world that we would choose to have happen. And when it does, life as we know it pretty much stops. We can't wait to pick up the pieces, slap them together into some kind of self, and get back to feeling more or less normal, and draw that old familiar cloak of ourself around us once again. Perhaps we just hate feeling vulnerable and exposed like that. And now let's get closer to what the Buddhist teachings say about all of this. Those moments of sheer nakedness and vulnerability, those moments when some event shatters our self-image, should rather be treasured than covered up as fast as we can. All of those moments when the curtain of our self-image is down, those are when we have a rare chance to actually see something about the true nature of our mind that is otherwise hidden. Yes, it's very, very sensitive, and it probably hurts to look. But these are some of the only opportunities we ever have to see beneath our own veneer, beneath the cloak of self-secrecy that we have drawn around ourselves. And just a few other remarks. The self is nothing to be ashamed of, whether it's our own self or the self as we see it in others. And yes, you can like or love yourself. It's your personal creation. Whether others love the self that we have assembled, that's up to them. But the self is not inherently bad or wrong. It's natural to be selfish, but at the same time it's best not to take yourself too seriously, considering what it actually is. It's okay to like yourself, but it's also important to get to know yourself, or to know about this self-image that we have created. Like the old game of pick-up sticks, if you carefully pick through everything that makes up your self-image, don't be surprised if there's nothing true or lasting underneath it all. It's a movable feast, but one that is empty of true existence. In other words, knowing the self cannot but help reveal a sense of humor that you may not know you had. In my opinion, Western psychology can be reduced to the seeming paradox. On the one hand, I'm told to find myself, to know myself, and to, above all, be myself. Yet in the same breath, I'm also told not to be selfish, not to be self-centered. Make sense? I don't think so. I hope that this brief introduction to looking at the self that's been presented here has given you some tools that you may need to solve this paradox, and at least sometimes not to be in such a hurry to put old Humpty Dumpty back together again. As the German philosopher Hegel said in his classic book, The Phenomenology of the Mind, and I quote, "We go behind the curtain of the self to see what is there, but mainly for there to be something to be seen." I hope you have enjoyed this segment of Spirit Grooves. If you'd like to read further on awareness, please see my free ebooks on astrologyland.com. Look for the book link in the middle of the page.